Good morning. Today is the feast day of Saints Cyril and Methodius, the apostles to the Slavs. At some point, maybe the church celebrated the feast of St. Valentine on this day, or maybe Hallmark just decided that this was the day that we were going to have Valentine's Day. And I always think it's quite cruel to poor St. Valentine that he be remembered with the kind of like gushy, emotional, sentimental version of love with, hearts and everything and Cupid and all that, because St. Valentine was an early Roman martyr. He had his head cut off. It's not very sentimental, not very romantic. But St. Cyril and Methodius, who we celebrate today, when I was in seminary, I got two Oscars that I could feed like little goldfish to, and I named them Cyril and Methodius. Went on fall break, they had this little automatic feeder to give them their, not goldfish, but their regular food. Came back, my room smelled horrible, looked, they were both floating at the top. Heater, broke and cooked them, so their own version of martyrdom, I suppose. But St. Cyril and Methodius actually weren't martyred, but they went to the Slavic people to proclaim the gospel, and they had to get creative. So much so that they invented an alphabet to be able to write down the Gospels, which I was thinking about that this morning, and I thought about, wow, talk about like real work of evangelization to help people to understand. They invented an alphabet. I guess we could think of, maybe a modern analog of that with Tolkien. He invented like a whole world of language and alphabet and whatnot with The Hobbit. And Lord of the Rings, which really is a very close analog to Christ interacting with us. But in our own lives, what are we willing to do to proclaim the good news? How are we willing to get creative? Perhaps with funny, cute little stories about cats or food, or inventing alphabets, or just going out and really trying to think outside of the box to proclaim the gospel. Jesus' way that we see in the gospel here of proclaiming the good news, of helping people to understand who he is by doing these miracles. He doesn't do the miracles just so people can look and say, ooh, wow, look at that miracle. He does the miracles so that people can see that he is God, that he says, yeah, I have the power to forgive sins, and that scares you. But watch this, I can also heal this man who is deaf and who has this speech impediment. And I'm going to do it by kind of getting down and dirty. I'm going to do it by being with you. I'm going to do it by touching you, by putting my fingers in your ears, which might cause you to go like, well, that's weird. But I'm here with you to lift you out of your brokenness, to lift you out of your sinfulness. He was with us in the fall, right? Here's the serpent, this ancient, cunning, evil, wicked creature who tempts Eve, says, come and eat from this tree that you were told by God not to eat from. And she listened. She said, okay, because she saw that the tree was good for food, it was pleasing to the eyes, and desirable for gaining wisdom. So what could possibly go wrong? Perhaps sometimes we look at things too in our lives and we say, well, that looks good, right? And if I had that, I might enjoy it, because it's good for food. It's something that will bring me pleasure, and perhaps it'll make me wise. It'll make me kind of higher than others. Well, that's called sin, right? We look at it and we say, yeah, it looks good. Looks like it'll be entertaining. It looks like it'll be something that'll make me happy. And in the end, our sinfulness makes us realize that no, that's not something that brings us joy. It's something rather that brings us shame. It's something that brings us guilt. It's something that distances us from God. Because in our desire to try to make ourselves like God, we push ourselves away from him. Rather, if we let God come into our lives and for him to make us like himself, perhaps it's uncomfortable, perhaps it requires change, perhaps it requires us to become vulnerable, to let him put his fingers in our ears. And then we can recognize, yes, this is the way. The way to God is not by me trying to figure it all out on my own, but rather by submitting myself to him, by letting go, by freeing myself, by trusting in him. Now that's not total apathy. That's not just completely letting go of everything in a way in which we say, well, I'm just going to sit here and wait for God to do his thing. No, we have to cooperate with him, of course. Right? Just as Adam and Eve, God finds them and he says, why are you hiding from me? Who told you that you're naked? Why are you so ashamed? And we have to say, well, God, because I didn't listen to you. I listened to the serpent. I listened to that ancient cunning creature that desires my destruction. I listened to the one who does not love me. I listened to the one who's jealous of me. Right? That's really the reason that the devil's so angry and mean and nasty, is because he's jealous of us. Because God gave us bodies. He made our bodies in his image and likeness. He created us in a way very different from the angels. He created us and gave us free will that's very different from the angelic will. The angelic will is one and done. It's either yes or no. But for us, it's a constant series of yeses and nos. And yes, I will do your will. Yes, I will serve you. Yes, I will follow you. No, Lord, depart from me because I'm sinful and I know better. Or depart from me, Lord, because I'm sinful and I don't deserve your mercy. But rather, if we allow him into our lives, if we allow him to come and to be among us, then we recognize his goodness. We recognize that he desires to save us. And then we too, like Cyril and Methodius, can say, oh, that's all I got to do. Let me share that with other people. Let me go out and tell that. Let me shout it from the rooftops. Let me tell the whole world. Let me invent alphabets so that I can explain it better. And that's the work of evangelization, to help people to recognize the goodness of God, to help people to recognize that he desires us to be happy and fulfilled, not in the ways of this world, but to be happy and fulfilled in doing his will, to be happy and fulfilled in remaining in his love. You go to the farthest flung corner of the earth with the greatest poverty, people living in garbage dumps, with cardboard box houses, and they can have that fullness of joy in Christ because they're united to him, because they let him love them, because they remain in his love. So today, on this feast day of Saints Cyril and Methodius, let us ask their intercession that they may continue to intercede for us, that we may be proclaimers of the good news. Let us also pray through the intercession of St. Valentine that we also may be able to endure the hardships of preaching the gospel, perhaps even unto martyrdom. As I say always, not necessarily a physical martyrdom, not necessarily having our heads cut off, but a martyrdom that can perhaps be an alienation, and a martyrdom that can be suffering for striving to do the will of God, suffering for proclaiming the good news. And we ask that God continue to direct us and show us his love and lead us ever closer to him.